Hi guys, I'm Angie, and today I'm going to tell you a story of how I made this board game. Recently, I went to an art fair and saw an old book get repurposed into a board game. I thought this is a neat idea to make my own board game that's not already on my game shelf. After purchasing a decent-sized book from a thrift store, I started to separate some pages using wax paper. Then I applied Mod Podge on the side of the book to glue the pages together. Once a decent amount of glue gets brushed on, I apply a temporary life load to keep the pages compressed. Next came the most tedious part of the project. I measure out a margin of a ½ inch all around and then hollow out the pages with an X-Acto knife. If you are also trying to do this, I would recommend to use a utility knife. It was fairly easy in the beginning with the pages, but the deeper I go, it got crooked. I don't know if there's an easier way to approach with hollowing out these pages, but I do have a solution to offer at the end on how to clean up the unevenness. Once all the pages are removed, I apply more Mod Podge to the insides of the pages to strengthen the new border. The game I wanted to make is called Can't Stop. It's a dice rolling game where you roll dice to get different combinations of number and move up the columns. There are plenty of YouTube tutorials on how to play this game if you are curious. To design the game board, I searched around online for different vector files of mountain until I found what I wanted. I brought the mountain into Inkscape and figured out how many columns and rows I needed and created guidelines. I drew a circle and duplicated them all over the board. To avoid making a blob of circle using the same color, I alternate white and gray between the columns. Finally, I added the name of the game at the bottom. What you see here is not the actual final product. I later tweaked the colors of the sky and the trees in the foreground. Once I finished with designing the graphic, I printed the board onto cardstock and then laminated it to make it last longer. To customize this book cover, I used brown paper to cover the existing text, then add a piece of cotton fabric with an interesting pattern that I found at my local craft store using spray adhesive. After cutting the fabric to size, I marked out the corner of the book onto the fabric so I could cut out the corners. This allowed each side to fold over onto the inside of the book easily. Then it was time for more spray adhesive. I folded over the side of the book very carefully, also using the table to help fold the entire side uniformly. I put the pages back temporarily and put a weight on top of a piece of plywood over the book and waited for it to dry. Next, I went back to the computer to design the book cover. I wanted to use an iron-on vinyl, so I searched for another vector image of a mountain, making sure that the shape is not too complex so I can easily read the extra off the mat later. I brought the mountain into Inkscape and added some simple text below it. I also did one for the book spine. I brought both graphics into Cricut Design Space and strategically arranged them to use as little vinyl as possible. I also made sure that the graphics were mirrored. Once the material was set to iron on, it was time to cut. I peel the graphics from the cutting mat by flipping it upside down and peeling the mat away. I did this because I didn't want the vinyl sheet to deform. The iron-on vinyl comes in 2 layers. The bottom layer is the vinyl and the top layer is the transfer tape. This is why the graphic needs to be mirrored, so that the blade can cut through the vinyl but not the transfer tape. After cutting out the 2 groups of graphics, they start to curl up. I mounted each one back onto the cutting mat using the sticky part as my tie down to help me easily weave the graphic. Next, I put a layer of wax paper over the graphic and used the Cricut iron press to apply the graphic onto the cover. I set the press to 30 seconds at 315 degrees. I tried to peel off the transfer tape, but the vinyl wasn't sticking to the cover, so I did another 30 seconds and then realized I probably should have waited for it to cool down before trying to peel the tape. The vinyl fan, game board, is now ready to be cut, so I slice it to size. I pick out a piece of green felt for the inside front cover. This is the surface where you would roll the dice. I cut the felt to size and checked to see if it was in the right spot. To make sure I keep the felt in the same place, I use spray adhesive to glue down half of the felt while holding down the other half. Once half of it sticks, I spray the other half. As I mentioned earlier, the X-Acto knife made an uneven cut as I go deeper into the pages. So I pull out my orbital sander to grind it down to a decent level. I started out with the sander in one hand and the pages in another and quickly realized this was not good. So I put together a quick jig with a lot of clamps so I could better control the sander. The pages are now ready to be mounted to each side of the book, but I had to split them into 2 pieces so the book could be completely open. I glue another piece of orange fabric to the inside of the spine. For the felt side, I used double-sided tape to attach the pages. On the board side, I attached the board using double-sided tape and then more tape to attach the whole thing onto the inside back cover. At this point, the book wasn't able to close normally because of the extra thickness that the felt added, so I decided to add some magnets into the corners. I tried to peel off a few pages off each corner, then drew enough to fit a small magnet. Then I glued the pages back over the magnet. For the game pieces, I pull out my miter saw and chop a bunch of tiny pieces from a long dowel. Usually if I want to do multiple cuts of the same size, I would use a stop block, but it was not easy to fit one in this case, so I just used a point of reference on the saw to cut the dowel. These pieces are not exactly the same size, but trust me, they are close enough. A quick tip to capture 75% of your cutting is to put a box behind the saw, since these pieces can fly. Once all the pieces were cut, I gave them a light sand and then spray painted them.